Hey, Comics Cubers. Today, our guest is Quynh Than from U-Boot Books, a publisher in Vietnam. So, Quynh is actually the publisher. She comes and talks to us about how the comic scene has evolved in Vietnam, kind of exploded in the last couple of decades, and how exciting that has been. The influences that the Vietnamese comics creators have, all the way from manga to American comics to European comics, bande dessinée. And she talks to us about the challenges of getting comics published in Vietnam, because in Vietnam, all of the comics have to go and get approved before they are published. You'll be able to see Queen and U-Boot Books at the Philippine International Comics Festival at SM Megamall, Megatrade Hall on July 5 and 6. I'm excited to meet them, and I'm excited for you guys to listen to our conversation here. You'll also be able to see me at the Philippine International Comics Festival if you drop by. I have a table. Come say hi. Without further ado, Queen of U-Boot Books. Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. Today I'm with Queen of U-Boot Books, a Vietnamese publisher who will be exhibiting at the Philippine International Comics Festival on July 5 and 6 at the Megatrade Hall in Megamall this year. How are you?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm
Hmm.
very excited to meet you in a couple of weeks. I
Oh,
have
sure. It's coming, finally.
I have one question that I ask for
Hmm.
everyone who comes onto my show for the first time, which is, why do you love comics?
Hmm. Okay, how long do I have to answer? Like 5 minutes or 15 minutes? Because I can
As
go on for days.
as long as you need.
Okay, now I'll keep it short and sweet because more to come. So my first experience with comic was when I was a child, like 3, 4 years old. So back then, Doraemon was the first comic books came to Vietnam. Well, it's not that we don't have comics before, but because of the war and everything, then things stopped for a while from 1975 to I think until the early 90s when Vietnam started opening their doors to the world again.
Mhm.
So the first comic book coming in Vietnam was Doraemon, and I grew up with it. So before I go to sleep, my mom have to read 1 or 2 episodes for me. To the point that she put me to the junior school, learning how to write and read when I was 4 years old, just so I can read Doraemon on my own. So she didn't have to read it before or sleep for me every night anymore. But I think like comic comes and go in my life. Like and actually, before I work as a publisher, I never really thought how comic got into my life. But now looking back, like it's just interwoven with how I grew up. So when I was in no, first grade, second grade, so 7 years old, my parents put me to a piano class. And to be honest, I really hate piano until now. So they have to bribe me with an issue of Lucky Luke. So back
Lucky
then,
Luke.
the Belgian Franco comic came back to Vietnam again because we start to reconcile our relationship with other countries, especially
Yeah.
the European. So we got the grant and also like the subsidized to publish. Like, I think some major publisher in Vietnam at the time published Lucky Luke and then Tintin, Tintin, The
Yeah.
Adventure of Tintin, and also Spirou and Fantasio. So that's how I got like really, really into comic at that time, the Franco-Belgian movement, and Smurf as well. Mm.
And the Smurfs.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was so popular at the time. And even to the more indie or like lesser known, like the Benoit or the It's No Good,
Hmm.
like the wave of the Franco-Belgian comic was really strong in the early 2000s. And then we joined the Bern Convention in 2004. So publisher in Vietnam cannot do like translate and publish illegally the comics anymore. Before we don't have to buy any license. We just bought a book overseas and then we scan and we translate it and publish. But upon that point, then comics in Vietnam kind of like stopped for a while. Publisher has to go through the license process properly this time. So lots of kids like me and like older generations start producing comics on their own. So that's
Oh,
how we
really?
got the kind of first wave Vietnamese comic makers. Yeah.
That's
Yes, it's
amazing.
true. I know, right? And the publisher at that time really want to fill in the gaps in the industry. They were, it was a lot of money that comic industry. That's why they are in dire need of finding another new title to publish. So they come to the Vietnamese comic makers, and yeah, that's how we got our first Vietnamese comic magazine. So I do have some behind me over here. So we have like the comic magazine, very thin issue, 20 to 40 pages. But then like it just showcase a range of diversity, like um anyone can submit to the publisher and then they would just put in the book and they make it like a monthly issue, a monthly I guess magazine. Yeah, so being featured on that was a dream of other kids like me at that time.
That's
Hmm.
great. That is a
Yes.
whole history lesson. That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like before that, I mean, before 1975, before we reunite as one country, we did have comic artists, but they was like separate between the north and the south of Vietnam, and they work for newspaper mostly. Yeah, like comic or cartoon on the newspaper. And then after that, they stopped doing, and then the new generation coming in just because of the Berne Convention. And now we keep going. So the wave comes and die down, and then comes and die one after another. And yeah, but I grew up and work as a multimedia designer. So actually it has nothing to do with comic. I did storyboarding, yes, but it's a kind of similar but different language.
Yeah.
It's just that when in 2016, roughly 9 years ago, a friend of mine, which is a very talented artist, and he was looking for a publisher to publish his first comic books. And at that time, like none of the publisher in Vietnamese was interested in that area, in that idea. Like nobody think that a Vietnamese comic maker can make it to the mass audience because manga and other like work from Korea or even like the American comic got into Vietnam and was so popular. So
Yeah.
just 9 years ago. Yeah. So at that time, I was working as a graphic designer. So I designed a cover and my partner who also knows a lot of people working in publishing industry, so we formed our first ever indie publisher just to publish my friend's book. Yes, and then one thing leading to another, then my friends introduced me to another artist, and then I found, oh man, this guy is so good, like we have to do something. And yeah, the rest is what you are having on your head now.
And
Mm,
that independent publishing company is Dubot Books.
yes,
My
we've been
God,
running
that's
for nine
amazing.
years so far. Yes, we're trying, not dying, but yeah. Mm.
That is incredible. That is very inspiring to hear. I'm actually really inspired hearing all of that.
Mm.
It does make sense that given the history of Vietnam, that the comics that you would be very influenced by have a very European tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But like at the time being, it's more influenced by the Japanese manga. And I think that's one unique thing about comics in Vietnam because we are kind of lacking the heritage. Is that how you like how I can say it, heritage?
yeah,
Like people doing comics and then they don't know who have walked that path before because most of the time people just give up after 1 or 2 years trying their hands at it, and then they grow up and they find another job and then they just leave like comics completely. Then a
mm,
new generation coming in thinking that they are the first, like the pioneer, the first person who ever did this. Then they try for a few years, they left, then another generation just coming in. So yeah,
comics are hard.
it
They're hard to make.
is, truly is. Yes.
As a publisher, do you feel a
Mm,
responsibility to encourage people to create more comics and to stick with it?
yes. I think I was lucky enough. Like when I grew up, I was exposed to not just only the Japanese manga, but also to the Franco-Belgian bande dessinée.
Yeah.
And then I also read the American comics, like the superheroes one, and also the graphic novels from UK and European. So yeah, I kind of like exposed to different kind of comics around the world. And I feel like we are lacking the diversity in Vietnam. So that's why me and my partner at Ubook, we're trying to bring more kind of comics to Vietnam, not just only manga, because a lot of people have been doing that so well.
Mhm.
So we encourage people to try their own style, not sticking to the manga style, but if you have a very illustrative style, then you can come to us and we can do something together. Or like they can have a different narrative, or they can do like no words comic, silent comic. Like, we encourage people to try new things rather than to stick to whatever's selling well to the market. Because I think, if we don't do that, then we're just stuck there. We have to push people to go up.
Is there a I guess the word is cost effectiveness to the manga style because it's
Mm,
in black and white. It's
mm-hmm,
yeah, so it just makes it easier to print and
mm,
for people to work in that. Yeah.
yes. Mm-hmm. And also the panels, like the frames in one page, are less condensed than, comparing to the American comics or the graphic novel style. So it
Oh,
tends
Europeans
to
especially.
stretch. I know, right? And the size are huge.
And the size are
So
huge.
yeah, I know. So that's why like people go on manga style, they kind of stretch their work longer and they can try to maintain some certain pace rather than you do a one shot in the European style or in American style, and then you have to spend a lot of time working on different stage. Coloring, for example, is the one
Yeah.
big challenge for Vietnam. Yeah.
Yeah, because the manga style
Mm,
does not need to be colored either.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was comparing some manga to some European
Mm,
comics, and like for the same
mm-hmm.
price, a
Mm.
manga is around this thick,
Yes.
but it's
Like
but it's
three,
also just like
200 something.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's also just around this big.
Mm.
Whereas a European comic is like this big,
Giant. It's
but
just
it's
giant.
this thick.
Yeah, 60 pages, including the hardcover.
Yes.
Mm.
Do you have a preference between those two types of things, or it's all fine to you?
Actually, like it was fine for me when I was reading the BD, the band Destiny, when I was a kid. Because in Vietnam, they don't do the thick cover, they don't do the hardcover, they only do the soft cover. So they
Really?
save on the cost. Yes, yes. I think that
Okay.
can be arranged. I do have the asterisk here, but it looks so thin. So this is the asterisk in Vietnamese version. But
Nice.
look at the spine.
Oh, that's
So
one
we try to.
asterisk story.
I know.
Right.
So they try to keep like the size to fit all of these panels in it, but they have to cut on the cover. But I agree with the decision because otherwise it just costs too much, too heavy, like difficult to store and transport, for the logistic in Vietnam. So I agree with this publisher to do that. But the European comic, I think they have seen better days in Vietnam because now nobody read it anymore, in my opinion. Like only the elder generation, like my dad, who grew up in a francophone school, like he
Mhm.
speak French, so he tried to spread the legacy to the kids. But now I think like younger, they still prefer to go on the manga style. So you can look at my bookshelf behind me. So yeah, we stock up a lot of manga, but also like European comics that underneath because they are just so big. Like they're all
Yeah.
down here. Hmm. I do have a preference actually, but if to pick a preference, I would go for the American graphic novels because I
Really?
want to
Oh, because
explore
it's the
more
middle ground.
narrative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. And it's short enough because at this age, like when you start working,
Yeah.
then to keeping up with the manga releasing speed, it's just like impossible. Every 2 weeks or every week, I cannot just go to the bookstore and get one issue. So I have to ask someone to collect for me.
No, I've
Yeah.
I've always told people that my the reason I don't read a lot of manga is because
Mm,
I don't want to commit to buying like 50 volumes of something.
true. So unless it's really, really good, like I do have preference of my favorite author, then I would do it. But yeah, otherwise it's the commitment that is really hard on us, those working people. So
So
yeah, I prefer one shot nowadays.
let's do this. Who
Mm,
are your favorite
mm,
manga cartoonists, European cartoonists, and American cartoonists?
That's tough. For manga, I think it's the Naoki Urasawa.
Okay.
Yes. He strike a great balance between, telling a great story and his paneling style. Like, well, some people will prefer the very big action scene or really, tremendous crime scene. But to me, like, Urasawa keep it minimal. But sometimes he know how to push attention to some certain like details on it. So I think like he's still doing a good story. Like if there's a movies, then his book is more like a movies rather than a TV series to me. Yeah, the suspension he built up very well. Then for the European, well, I always want to own a piece of Moebius, but sometimes it's quite hard to get what he's trying to say, but the art is striking. I have
Yeah.
like some Incan issue at home. Still trying to read it now and then, reread again and again, and some always find something new after every time I read it. Yeah.
Yeah. And for
Mm.
American?
Wow, this is so tough, man. I couldn't think of a name at the moment. Let's say maybe the latest book I read. Hmm. Actually, the latest book I read again was not a new book, but it's from Greg Thompson. So
Oh yeah.
Blankets from Greg Thompson. Yeah.
Yeah. I love him.
I read it again. I read it again. Like I first read it 3 years ago. And this time I read it again and it really struck me. Like the way the story unfold. Mm,
Blankets.
yes.
Yeah, the first
Even
time
though
I
it doesn't have like a climax or everything, but like it really hit me at that point sometimes when the girl said that when the guy's looking at her, he's looking through her. And I was in that situation before, so I feel super related. Yeah.
I first read Blankets right after a breakup.
Mm. Oh no. I can imagine.
So I get it.
Mm.
I was like, this is the greatest book ever. It totally understands me.
Yeah, I love Greg Thompson. Even though this is only the first book I read of him, I'm
Yeah.
trying to get the Kinstan Roots and another one about the Iran or Islamic
Hibabi.
word. I
Habibi.
forget the name.
Habibi.
Habibi.
Yeah.
Yes. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
both are great, but I'd encourage you to
Mm-hmm.
look for his first book, which is Goodbye Chunky Rice, which
Mm.
is thinner. It's about a
Mm-hmm.
turtle and a mouse. Uh,
Oh, I think I saw that one. Yes.
yes, that
Mm.
one has made grown men cry. Not me,
Oh no.
but other grown men I know. Uh,
Yeah.
what would you say is the defining feature, is the defining characteristic of Vietnamese, maybe pop culture, but also just Vietnamese comics?
Hmm. Like at the time being, or looking through our not so long history.
You can give me an answer for both.
Hmm, interesting. Because for the time being, I think in the last 5 years, especially after COVID, I felt that young Vietnamese artists and comic makers, like comic creators, we're trying to find or trying to embed more Vietnamese element into our works. So I think like at this point, the art is there. So I don't think like Vietnamese art or like Vietnamese artists are lesser than any great graphic novelists or comic makers around the world. But the story is always what we get kind of like stuck on. So recently, people trying to find more story from our history or trying to like reimagine the past or making fiction but inspired by our cultural values. Yeah, that's the trend I'm noticing.
What Yeah, so given that and given what you've read of comics from around the world, which are plentiful,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
what would you think those Vietnamese values are that are in contrast to the others that you see?
Mm. Well, it's really interesting because, like, even though we're trying to tell story from the past, but we kind of like putting a lot of thoughts and introspection of the modern person into it. So we have like story of a king in the past trying to run away from his enemy, but then he keep asking his family, his keep asking himself like, is this running worth it at all? Because so many people have died because of him. Those kind of like thoughts and internal struggle was not taught in Vietnamese history class. So I think like yeah, people are trying to project like their internal monologue into the work they create at the moment, rather than stick to the history we are taught in school. So that's one thing. Hmm.
Okay.
But then they're not always result in good endings, you know, because we are in a country when we have to screen our work before we publish. And sometimes some elements are too sensitive. So we cannot get that published, or we have to go like a long route just to get it published somehow, or we cannot do lots of marketing. But to Vietnamese comic, if you don't do a lot of marketing, then the audience wouldn't know. They
Of
will still
course.
stuck to yeah the manga and like more popular titles from all around the world. So we kind of like stuck in there, you know. Some story have a very good narratives, but we cannot shout too loud about it. But if we don't do it, then we cannot sell our book. That's the struggle of a publisher. Mm.
I visited Vietnam for the first time
Mm.
in April of this year,
Mm-hmm.
and
How was it?
I thought it was very interesting. You have a very
Mm-hmm.
very interesting traffic situation. I've never been in a place where like there's so many cars, but they're all constantly just moving. So I
Mm.
was in Hanoi. I'm like, I
Oh,
was like,
welcome to Hanoi. Yes.
so at first I thought I was always gonna get hit by a car, and then I
Ah,
realized
no,
if I
you
just
don't.
yeah, I realized if I just cross the street, they're
Mm.
going to just kind of go around me. I thought it was amazing. Everybody must be like a
Mm.
really good driver.
Mm.
Um,
Yes, I think that's one thing reflected the way we tell our story, be it comics or movies or whatever we do. So we keep moving despite the obstacle. So if there's an obstacle, we figure out a different way to, you know, go in between the lines or something. It's very flexible and fluid. Yeah.
yeah, it was. I thought that part was amazing, and
Mm,
also I think that
mm,
going to Vietnam, I have a you get a
mm,
preconception of what it would be like to visit a country where the
mm,
media would be screened, but I didn't
mm-hmm.
really feel that either. Like
Yeah.
so, yeah. So I guess I don't. I guess the question becomes, what are the kinds of things that get screened out,
Mm,
and
mm,
is it really that sensitive?
mm. Yeah, so there is a list of things that will be, you know, screened out or you're not allowed to publish, but it's not really black and white. So sometimes, like, it depends on the situation of the world and our country in relation to other world as well. So there was a time our relation with China was really intense. So anything that mentioned, you know, China in the past would be screened out or like have to wait for a moment. So the situation like die down and we can publish again. So same thing, like anything talking about the government or anything that trying to deflect or reject a historical hero. So that's where the reimagined history thing coming in and got trouble with. So
Mm.
yeah, the history we taught in schools was kind of like the only truth to most of the people. So wherever we try to do all the reimagine or like different perspective, then we have to do it like I don't know, more flexible or you know, more subtle, just so that we don't offend some people while we still can reach the audience that looking for it. Yeah.
I get the feeling that
Mm.
you in particular may not be in agreement with the history that you are taught.
It depends on the situation, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, there were times we're trying to teach comics to the one. So just circle back a little bit. So not about screening, but when you publish a book in Vietnam, then you will have to partner with a state-owned publisher. Because we are a private-owned publisher, we have to partner with a state-owned publisher to get us the permission.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like instead of trying to clash head-on, then we try to teach people what comics are, like how great they are, what are the convention of the storytelling in comics, and then do they know like the editors or people from the state-owned publisher can have better understanding. And sometimes they agree with us that they let that part go, like they don't screen that out anymore. They even encourage us to explore new territory, like within the safe space, you know. So yeah, I think trying to have a talk and understand each other argument is always a better way rather than just, clash on all the time.
But if that's the case,
Mm,
if it becomes a case where you have a discussion,
mm-hmm,
is it a matter of if you got away with something once, will you always be
mm.
able to get away with it, or will you always have to have that discussion?
Well, yes, actually, like it also depends on the person you are working with. So if we have like an editor from the state-owned publisher that understand comics well enough, and we try to collaborate again with him or her for our next book, just so that we have a partner in in the other side, so we can get our things published better and faster. Mm,
Okay. All right,
yeah.
that makes sense. Let's talk
Yeah,
about
I guess like there's also learning on both sides. We learn how the government works and the government, or at least the state-owned publisher, learn how comic works. So yeah.
so let's talk about this book.
Mm. Uh-huh.
Um, so this is the book that Paulo
Mm.
Heras of Comiket
Yes.
gave
Mm-hmm.
to me to to kind of read up on you guys on Dubut books.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
this is Noan by Van. I'm gonna butcher their names, but it's Van Nanki and Linthak.
Yeah, so Vạn Nhân Ký, Noãn, you nailed it right. It means the egg.
Okay.
So the Vạn Nhân Ký means Chronicles of Old Men. And this is the first book of the series. It's not
Okay.
actually a series, it's just like a collection of 7 different stories looking at 7 historical figures in Vietnam, a different perspective on how they think, how they feel, and like reflection on their action at the time. So,
Oh,
yeah.
that I just read that completely wrong. I kind of thought there was the Van Nanki was the writer.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, the writer is Lin and Pat.
Linthak.
Those two
Linthak.
names at the bottom. Yes, there
Ah,
are 2
okay.
brothers,
Oh, they're
brothers and
two
sister.
brothers.
Yes, so the brother was the screenwriter and the sister was the main artist.
That's amazing. So they're brother and sister team.
Yes, yeah.
This book looks great. It is in Vietnamese. I haven't been able to, so I can't read it, but I could. Here's a trick to everybody who has an Android phone. Google Lens is your friend, and
Hmm.
you can actually put it over these things, and it will translate it for you. It won't really be
I
great
think same thing.
translations. Yeah.
Yeah. I think same goes for the Google Translate on iPhone or any other phone. Like you can take a picture and then it kind of getting the translation through for you.
Yeah, so that's
Mm.
pretty great. So can you talk to us about this book and
Hmm.
what is it? And it will be available at the Philippine International Comics Festival.
Yeah, sure. So the Chronicles of Old Men is the names of the series. And as I said before, is a kind of bigger scope of relooking or reimagining our historical figures in Vietnamese history, like what that person think, like how they do at the time, or like their the perspective of another person living at the same time with that historical figures. So the first one was Noang. It was about the first king, not really the first king, um, the first king of the last dynasty in Vietnam. So we still monarchy up until the early 20th century, and then we become like the country as we are now. Hmm. So the main character of this story was a prince, and he was forced into an escape from his hometown because suddenly everyone in his family was murdered. So he became the last person of the family, and he was destined to be the king. So the enemy was chasing after him. Yeah, the but along the way he was having this thinking like whether all of the sacrifice of other people around him was worth it. Like he's just a normal person, like a 12, 13 years old kids. Like is it worth it at all? Like should he just hand himself to the enemy and stop all of this sacrifice and suffer, and then just let another person to be the king instead of him? Yeah, that kind of retrospective and question. Rather than the big fights, like this is not that kind of story.
It's not that kind of
To
story.
me,
Yeah.
yeah. And in the end, like I'm not gonna spoil for everyone, but in the end, a big event happened and changed his direction and also his thinking altogether. Yeah.
You're saying this is the first part of a series.
Mm-hmm.
How long will the series go?
Well, the author told me that he's planning to have it in 7 books, and he's already working on the second book and crafting the screenwriting for the third book. So yeah, kind of on track now.
That's great. That's great.
Hmm.
What other books will you be bringing with you to the Philippine International Comics Festival?
Yeah, we're debuting like one comic book even before we have it in Vietnamese. So we go to pick up, we will release like we launch this book, and then when we go back to Vietnam, we will launch the Vietnamese version of it.
Oh,
So you
wow.
guys will read it before everyone else. So this is the book we will be debuting at Kickoff. The name is What
Nice.
Will Be, and we will print it in English. So you have English inside, you don't have to try the Google Translate anymore. I think everyone will love this book, especially if you are comic makers or comic creators, because this is an honest memoir of a comic artist in Vietnam.
Nice.
Yeah, so this book is about a boy, a countryside boy. Like he lived in the village on the the highland of Vietnam, and he has this dream to be a comic artist just because his neighbor went to the art university, and his neighbor told him that if you become an artist you will become rich really fast. So as a boy he loved to draw, and then he thought, okay, I want to be a comic artist and I want to be like an artist just like my neighbor. But at that time, like 20 years ago in Vietnam, we don't have any sort of education or even training for comic making. So our main character tried to apply himself for to the University of Fine Arts. So you see like how different it is between comic making and fine arts, but our main character didn't know until he actually started his first classes, and then like all his dreams shattered because he has nothing to do with comic at all. He's just doing all of this like drawing of the nude bodies, and then it's not that bad, but it's not what he trying to achieve. And also
Yeah.
the pressure of being success because all of his friends like got their first job, they're freelancing, but he's still stuck there with lots of drawing but not knowing what to do. Yeah, so this is a journey of like how you become a comic artist in Vietnam without any of the accessibilities or training. But in the end, like it's really moving because in the end he found someone who teach him the art of visual storytelling. So that's he finally tried to link his love for comic making with visual storytelling and publish his first book.
What are you looking forward to when coming to the Philippines to promote these books?
Mm, yeah, well, I think because it will have some shared experience with artists in Filipinos, but it will give you a glimpse of what we have to go through when you want to apply for an art school in Vietnam in general. And it also reflects a kind of history of comics in Vietnam, because there was a part in there saying like our main character's first audience were his friends online. So back in the early 2000s, the internet really big boom in Vietnam, and all the comic forums start to, yeah. And then our main character just upload his first drawing online, and then a lot of people coming in put on the comments or even like the encouragement for him. For the first time he felt like, oh, these people really understand what I'm doing, not my teacher, not my friend, or not my parents at all. So it really reflects how comics got into Vietnam and the movement of comic making around Vietnam in the early 90s and 2000.
That's that's crazy. It's almost like because there wasn't comics for so long,
Mm-hmm.
the moment it was allowed, like everybody was like, "Oh, boom!" Right? That's that's
It was really
crazy.
fun. Yeah, I was in secondary school at that time, and I confirmed like all the moments in this book. Like it's super nostalgia for me as well, because like at that time, I had school from 6 in the morning until 5 p.m. in the afternoon, and I came back home at 6. The first thing I got when I got to go to home is I turn on my PC. I go to that forum. I check if anyone like replied to my thread the other day. So it was really fun having friends all around the country. Mm.
That's great. I'm excited to read it.
Mm.
That sounds you sold
Mm-hmm.
me. So,
Yeah.
is there
Yeah.
anything
Well.
else? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean like because I work as an editor as well, like
Mhm.
for comic editors. But this book, like I don't feel like I have much to do for my job because the artist, he laid out the story and also like all the connection between each chapter so well already. All I got to think of is just the cover. That's my job. But along the way, when I read this one, it puts on to put me through the it start like kind of make me question the nature of a publisher as well.
Oh, really?
Because there is a part he talking about the relationship of an author and an audience. Should you draw like what people expect to like the things that people expect you to draw? Or should you draw to satisfy the trends or the movement at the moment? You sell well, but you don't feel that's your work, or you just go on with your personal style, and nobody's gonna buy your work. So that's the dilemma. I feel the same as a publisher too. Like we publish things that not a lot of people in Vietnam will read, but I feel like if I don't do this, then there's no way for other people to try new things. So it's
Yeah.
not like, well, yeah, so we paved the way so someone else can work or run after us. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's moving in that sense. Mm.
There are certain things that like the moment they exist, even though not a lot of
Mm-hmm,
people will read it, but just because they
mm-hmm,
exist, other people will now think, "Oh, I can make something like
mm.
that too."
True, yes. I did talk to some students, or even like university student, or even like secondary high school student about making comics, and they told me like, oh, seeing like young or indie publishers still publishing Vietnamese comics give me hope. So I know
Yeah.
that when I have a work, then someone will be willing to publish my work because one person cannot do it, of course. And
Yeah.
even like one publisher cannot do that. We have one, two, three other indie publisher that specialize in Vietnamese comic, but we all struggle. We have to do different types of book, or we have to do a second job just to maintain the business. So yeah, I really appreciate people who put a lot of thought into comics. Hmm.
Yeah. Do you do you know the band The Velvet Underground?
Oh yes.
Yeah, so they're really old. But
Hmm.
I've always found them interesting because the thing that was always said about them was that not a lot of people watched them, but everybody who watched
Mm.
them became a musician.
Mm.
And I think that some comics, some movies, whatever, like
Mhm.
those are the reasons that they exist. It's because even though
Mm.
they might not be widely read or widely viewed,
Mhm.
just the fact that they exist will inspire other people to make more. I think that's
True.
interesting.
Yeah. I feel
Um,
like being a comic artist is such a brave choice. It's just pure bravery.
it's it's hard work. Comics are
Mm.
hard,
Yes.
right? And the other thing that I wanted to ask you was,
Mm.
okay, um, one of the things about being an editor is that
Mm.
really, if you get good people, you probably don't have to do a lot of work.
But
So
not all the time though.
how do you decide, like, how do you decide as a publisher which books to publish and which books not to publish?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, even being like a comic editors in Vietnam now is tricky enough because there's no training, no schools to teach us what to do. So I got the advantage of my background as a storyboarder and also like a learning design in visual communication. So my perspective on the visual storytelling might help some of the comic artists. So yeah, what to publish? We have a kind of like a core value at Ubook Books. So it's like a checklist, like when we receive a manuscript, and then we'll say whether it fits with our spirit, our core value of what we're trying to tell through our publication. Then we have a chat with the author to see their attitude and how well they're willing to collaborate. Because sometimes like we have author who, well, really difficult to persuade or very difficult to communicate. Hmm.
Okay.
Like I can't even talk to him or her. I have to be at their home, waiting in their living room, waiting for them to show up because they
Oh
don't listen to
God.
phones or email. Yes. But we go to such length because we found the story is captivating or like the spirit behind it, the big idea is intriguing enough. Mm. But
Incredible.
for me, like when I pick a manuscript, I often look at the bigger theme, like what the biggest message the author trying to tell. Mm. Like you can pick a story that have the setting in the past, but the question the author put to the audience might be really relevant to what we are having in the society now. And I think it should it deserve a chance to be published.
You say that
Mm,
the first thing you take a look at is if it would fit
mm,
within the spirit of what you were trying
mm-hmm,
of what you as a publisher are trying to accomplish. What
mm,
are those values for you?
mm-hmm. Yes. So the first thing is the diversity in style and also in the narrative. Yeah, we try to make comics accessible to everyone. So you may have a good story, the art not so good. Okay, we might give you a chance or we find someone to collaborate with you. But I don't feel like we should gatekeeping like must have been a master in this style or like you must have the very good drawing in order to be a comic artist. That's the first thing. Like comics is for everyone. And the diversity, the inclusivity we try to bring to the table. And the second thing is we're trying to tell the spirit of a modern Vietnamese. So you earlier you mentioned on how other media, the Westerner media try to portray the Vietnamese. So comics from us is what we think like the Vietnamese should look like in the other gaze, rather than we let other media define who we are. We are like a modern city. We do have modern city. We do have like young people who trying to change the world. We don't have the paddy fields with the buffalo all the time, or people running on the rice paddy field. We don't. I don't even have that since 3 4 years already. Even the Mekong Delta in Vietnam now, they become having the machines and everything replace the animals. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
the
story
Philippines has
from
to deal with
Vietnam.
that problem too.
Mm, mm.
Yeah,
Then I guess
when I lived in the States 20 years ago, I was asked if
mhm.
we actually had running water.
Or like air conditioner or something like that.
Oh
So
my
I
God,
guess
like
comic.
how do you
Oh,
speak English so well? Was a very frequent
oh
question.
yes. Yes. I'm not judging, but so yeah, I feel like comic provide us a chance to speak up and to tell the story. Hmm. Because other form of literature in Vietnam cannot get that far to the overseas. We were stuck with the translation. Like we
Mhm.
have great novelists, but finding a translator to translate from Vietnam to English or other language is so difficult. But with comics, we have a chance because of the visual storytelling.
It's
So
true.
if you don't understand the words, then you still have the visual to look at. And I'm encourage people to do silent comic too, so we don't have to do the translation. Mm.
That's absolutely true because, like I said, I don't
Mm.
understand the words here,
Mm.
but I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you it looks great,
Mm.
right? And I think that the storytelling is clear enough that I know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, yeah. So this was great. This was a fun conversation. I look
Mm-hmm.
forward to seeing you on the 5th and 6th of July.
Ah,
So
we're same. Mm.
Hubert Books will be at Philippine International Comics Festival, PCOF
Mm-hmm.
2025 at SM Megamall, Megatrade Hall. If you come see them, come see me. I will also be there. And we will all have a very good time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you, Comics Cube.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
I'm so
Quynh.
excited to see everyone in Manila. Our first time to Manila.
We're excited to have you.
Mm.
Thank you so much.